There we go.
Okay, so you're recording. All right. So, well, I haven't done my podcast in so long. Welcome back to the Rooted Conversations podcast. I am your host, I think, Mitch Webb. Today I have my friend Nikki in the house. Nikki is the microbiome queen, and she
That's
is
right,
the
baby.
host of the IBS Freedom podcast. I hear she has some pretty dope guests that are coming as her last guests.
Including but not limited to Mitch Webb. Yes, you're the grand finale of guests for us on our podcast.
Yeah, same here. We're saving the best for last. We're kind of wrapping up season two here, and Nikki and I actually recorded a fantastic podcast maybe 3 months ago, which got lost in the cloud. So this is round two. We're coming back for more, and so Nikki's here in the Raleigh, Durham, Holly Springs, Cary conglomerate, whatever you want to call it. And one thing I really love about Nikki is that she is willing to change your mind. She's been around the block. She knows her shit, literally and figuratively. We're going to be talking about that today. So if you know anything about the gut, we don't talk about poo. It's not a good podcast. But Nikki's awesome. Nikki, welcome back for around 1.5, 2.2.0.
Yeah, whichever we want to call it, right?
Yeah.
When you said the first one got lost, I think my exact response was, "So you're telling me we get to do it again?" Yes. So
I
yeah,
was like, thank you so much for understanding because I had a panic attack. Speaking of the nervous system.
yeah. No, it's all good. If there's anything life will teach you, it's that shit happens. And if you can have a good sense of humor about it, I think that goes a long way.
Well, I think we both know how to do that.
Yeah, thankfully.
So, where do we start? One of my first question is like, what got you interested in the gut? Where does that start?
Ooh. So I'll give you the condensed version of what could potentially be a very long story.
Yeah.
Um, the long and short of it was I went to chiropractic school
Oh,
because I had chronic low back pain.
okay.
And nobody could figure it out. I strengthened my glutes, I strengthened my core, I did all the standard stuff. And I figured, God damn it, if nobody could figure it out, then I'm going to go to back school and I'm going to figure it out. Turned out no amount of chiropractic helped, no amount of, yoga or acupuncture helped. It was actually healing my gut and cutting out gluten that made my 5 years of low back pain go away.
Wow.
Yeah. And in the process of going to school, I was a seminar junkie. I went to a seminar or a conference pretty much every weekend. I had no
I
life.
can't I can't imagine that about you.
Oh my God, it was so fun. And they all had student discounts. So like my roommates and I would go for super cheap. And sometimes they had free food and cheap admission. And that was like a cheap grad student's dream to get the free food included too. But I started getting into functional medicine. We'll probably come back to that term and that profession shortly because
Definitely.
we both have assorted opinions on the functional medicine community.
Hmm.
But started getting into nutrition, lifestyle medicine, herbal medicines by way of the medicine community. And I had IBSD at the time. I was never
Hmm.
told as such because I never went and got like official medical help, but I had bloating all the time. I had abdominal distension that was so bad. I lived every woman's worst nightmare. I was asked if I was pregnant when I was not pregnant.
I'm not
Yeah.
laughing at you. I'm laughing with you.
Oh no, I'm laughing as I tell the story. It was preposterous. But I was so distended I looked pregnant, genuinely. Um, and I had diarrhea. Like I would get diarrhea at the drop of a hat, seemingly. And I was always doing an elimination diet, doing a food sensitivity test, wanting to, test for parasites, test for that. And I was constantly trying to figure it out and seek answers. And, I was either researching on my own or I was going to these seminars and conferences and feverishly jotting down notes about how this would apply to my case. And one thing I've noticed, because to your point, I'm nearly 40, so I'm old enough now I can firmly say I've been around the block in this profession. But you hang around in any given profession for a while and you start noticing patterns and trends. So like way back in the day, before I really started practicing, the hot topic, the it girl diagnosis was candida. Right.
Mm.
And everybody, like I'm picturing like 90s and early 2000s. You go to some like obscure fringe naturopath in the 90s or the 2000s, and you would get told that you had candida and you would do like a candida cleanse. Then moving into the time frame when I had GI symptoms and I was really struggling and looking for answers, the hot it girl diagnosis that everybody in the functional medicine world was talking about was leaky gut.
I thought you were going to say that when you said candida. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get you.
Yep. So my whole world focused on leaky gut. I cut out foods that could be inflammatory. I cut out foods that could cause leaky gut. I read papers. I took the probiotics. I took the turmeric. I did the things. I spent, no joke, probably thousands of dollars on nasty tasting like L-glutamine, gut fixer-upper kind of products. And it didn't do me a lick of good.
And
I,
the intention was to seal the gut, like bone broth would do that.
yeah, yeah, like if I just healed the leaky gut, then my
Mhm.
life would be hunky dory and I wouldn't have these symptoms anymore. And I circled that drain for the better part of 3 years. And then the funny thing is, I kind of accidentally got better, but it was as I started to loosen my grip. So I moved out of a stressful living environment with a roommate that now in retrospect I think was bipolar and did not know it.
Yeah.
Um, and that helped. Then I moved in with my then boyfriend, now husband. We had done a long distance relationship, and that helped a lot. So, like,
Yeah.
stress levels coming down
Mhm.
again.
Mhm.
I kind of accidentally started adding in some foods because I think I was at a point that I was just like, screw it.
What
I
were the foods you added in? I'm curious.
so when I did food sensitivity testing, potatoes came up as like a weak positive for me.
Hmm.
And so I went several years without eating potatoes, which is awful because potatoes are delicious.
Yeah.
And there was some point I was out to breakfast with a friend, and I still to this day I'm gluten free. Like I'm pretty sure I'm a celiac, so that's a no go for me. But I remember being out at a restaurant with her and thinking, okay, like I can get eggs and bacon, but I need something else to go with it, and I can't get toast. I can't get a waffle. I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna eat the potatoes, and I'm just I have to get something else to eat. And I ate the potatoes. They were freaking delicious, and nothing
Hmm.
happened. And that's how I reintroduced potatoes.
Yay. That's
Yeah.
so awesome. I love, I had a lot of restrictive diets and accidentally um, introduced foods and didn't have this crazy blow up, not
Because
to
you weren't
use
aware.
it, blow up moment that I was expecting. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
shit, and it makes sense like coming out of these stressful environments. Um, One question I had about the gluten is, do you think like, so it sounds like you think you're celiac.
Yeah.
Do you think it's how, what is like glyphosate and the hybridized wheat? And we said
Ooh.
stress, like how much do those play a point or play a part
Ooh.
in the gluten sensitivity, you think?
Okay. So two different questions. Um, I'm reasonably certain I'm a celiac.
Yeah.
My mom's side of the family is riddled with autoimmune disease, and they happen to be autoimmune diseases that cluster with celiac disease.
Which are,
There's like four or five that cluster together. So Hashimoto's,
yeah.
rheumatoid arthritis,
Yep.
type 1 diabetes,
Yeah.
pernicious anemia,
Yep.
and celiac disease tend to cluster together in
That
families
makes a
and
lot
in
of sense.
individuals.
Yeah.
So you'll frequently see people with like two or three or four of those diagnoses clustered again within people and within families. So my mom's side of the family has a lot of that. The other thing is when I did my initial sort of evaluation on myself, I did have the celiac antibodies on blood testing.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing. It was not from LabCorp or Quest, like a standard conventionally accepted lab. It was from a functional lab called Cyrex.
I know. Yeah, I've heard that one.
So I don't know if it's perfectly 100% accurate if we were to compare it to like LabCorp. And at the time, I just decided, all right, well, I know that gluten doesn't agree with me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to eat the stuff again. And so I just said, whatever, I'm just not going to eat gluten. And I went gluten free. And so I never went to the GI doctor. I never got like an endoscopy. I never pursued like the official diagnosis. But the presence of the antibodies and the family kind of genetic lineage, I'm pretty sure I'm a celiac. And I still do to this day. I react to gluten, even if I'm not consciously aware that I've eaten it. I
Oh,
had,
okay. That's what I was going to ask is like, when's the
yeah,
last time you had it? And it sounds like you had enough information to make that diagnosis. If that person was sitting in front of you and presenting with all of those different
yeah,
uh, flags, if you will, you would probably be like, I don't know that we need to shove a tube down your throat, but it might be best if we avoid
good
this.
enough. Yeah. And like, I have mixed feelings about that decision now. 16 years later. Like part of me wishes that I had pursued the more official yay or nay on it. But
Hmm.
it is what it is. That was my level of understanding back then, and it's okay. But yeah, like I remember one of the more recent gluten exposures in recent years, my husband and I got, this was back when I didn't eat dairy, so that'll segue into another story potentially.
Definitely.
Um, so I wasn't eating dairy for also many years, like 10 years or more. And we got these like vegan ice cream bar things, where it's like vanilla ice cream enveloped in chocolate, like they dip it in chocolate kind of a
Yep.
thing. So
Yep.
we got those. They were vegan ice cream bar things that we got from Target. We bought them at Target. We brought them home. We had gone out to dinner, and TMI, but you invited the microbiome queen on your
I,
show, so you asked for
I
this.
definitely expect us to talk about poo on this show.
Horrendous diarrhea. Like, had to sprint to the bathroom. My GI system turned itself inside out. But then I was done. And it was just like, what the hell was that? And I remember going downstairs and saying, I think I got glutenated, but I don't know where from. The
Mhm.
restaurant, like the waitress at the restaurant, was so sure that my meal was safe. And she said her best friend is a celiac and she understands. And like I'm running through what I had eaten. There's no way they put gluten in like the Brussels sprouts that I got. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And it was my husband who thought to check the damn ice cream things. There was a vegan caramel sauce on the inside of the ice cream. They used wheat in
Uh,
the vegan caramel sauce.
Back in the
Why?
day, back in the day when we were trying to learn how to do these, I did so many restricted diets, and like I think about keto. I had a friend who had seizures, and he was managing it with the
Mm,
keto diet, and he hadn't had a seizure in like 6 months, and somebody sent him a keto supplement that had chicory root in it that spiked his blood sugar, and
mm,
he went into like a seizure, and it's like
mm.
just manufacturers that don't know what's going on. That was a big problem back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, and like mislabeling of things.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
yeah, I've gotten glutenated like at restaurants. They told me something was gluten free and it wasn't. It's stuff like that. But I've had a couple instances in like more recent years where I accidentally got exposed to something, had the severe GI upset, and then it was after the fact. Like I called the restaurant and asked about ingredients. Or we looked at a label of something and found, oh, there was wheat. But I don't know why they would put friggin' wheat in a vegan caramel sauce and a damn ice
Yeah,
cream on a stick. That made not a lick of sense to me.
that's
But
pretty crazy.
anyway, I think that the wheat thing probably is pretty genuine for me. To your point about gluten sensitivity, so there's two things. A lot of people who believe that they're gluten sensitive actually have difficulty digesting high FODMAP foods, many
I
of
see. I
which
want to know
are,
the difference between those. Like, this is your world. That was my next
yeah,
question was how do you know if you're like, you have to avoid this? Maybe you should limit
yeah.
it. Or it's like, you got a green light. Like, tell me about those.
Yeah, so like for me, it takes very little exposure to cause a pretty significant reaction. I think
Hmm.
that's one
Very
telltale
little. So
sign.
not much at all. And you'll have that.
Yeah.
It sounds like your body's like, nope, and just got it out of the system.
Yeah, just purge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's maybe an indicator. So like with the FODMAP style reaction, oftentimes those folks will have been told that they have IBS. They might have been told that they had SIBO, which we could talk about later if you want.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so they might have one or both of those diagnoses in their history, and they probably would notice very similar symptoms if they ate other high FODMAP foods like beans, apples, avocado, onion, garlic, cabbage. Again, a lot of these are painted behind me on my wall.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like if you notice a symptom similarity between wheat, which is a high FODMAP food, or like wheat, barley, and rye, the gluten containing grains, they're all high FODMAP. So if you have rye bread or wheat bread or whatever, they're all going to be high FODMAP. Or like, wheat based pasta, you know, versus like a good example of this. So you can look for the correlation with different foods. The other thing is there are foods that contain a trace amount of gluten, but they're not really going to have FODMAP content to them. So again, for me, one of the times I
Soy
got
sauce, would that be
glutenated,
one?
bingo. I was
Yeah.
just going to say my first gluten exposure that I was aware of after I went gluten free was soy sauce at a sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have enough of the wheat like prebiotic to have a high FODMAP content, but it does
Mhm.
have gluten. So for
Yeah.
me, it still triggers that
Which is
response.
tiny amounts too, and it's fermented,
Yeah.
right? So like it's got to drop it even more. There was a time when I only had tamari and did all that stuff too, so
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's the thing is like with a FODMAP issue, again, more common with like IBS, especially IBS-D, diarrhea-based symptoms, and in like the community who's been told they have SIBO. Um, you would typically notice a dose dependent response. So
Hmm.
you would notice like if you eat one bite of bread, it doesn't do much of anything to you. If you have like one piece of bread, you might get moderate symptoms. If you have two pieces of bread, you're going to get more severe symptoms. So
Hmm.
there's typically with a FODMAP thing, it's going to be a dose dependent response. You'll see a pattern with other high FODMAP foods causing similar issues for you.
Hmm.
Um, and then you would notice that things like soy sauce with that contain gluten but not whole wheat or the prebiotic, those things probably wouldn't trigger you nearly as much or at
Yeah.
all versus if you were to eat like a loaf of bread. Yeah.
The thing
Um,
that gets like when I'm hearing this, the thing that I like when I my gut gets reactive, it's like I love my Guinness lately. I can't remember what type of grain is in there, but I get if I have one, two, three, four, something like that, fine. If I go all out and I have several, then I get gas. But I never have that. My wife does not want to sleep in the same bed as me that night. And but I could eat an entire pizza. I could have
yeah.
ice cream with it. I could have burger buns. I mean, nothing
Yeah.
else. That's the only. What is that? What would you say that is?
So I think that's where the alcohol
It's the
is,
alcohol.
right?
Yeah.
So like, yes, beer has gluten in it, but it also it's alcohol, it's booze. And you could probably notice a similar reaction if you were to have 5 shots of vodka in one night versus 5 beers.
Yeah.
At least that's my guess.
Yeah.
Because at low amounts, so like one single serving, alcohol is very mildly inflammatory, but
Oh, that's cool.
it actually turns on genes that dampen inflammation and enzymes that dampen inflammation. So if you
Dampen
have,
inflammation, like it helps with inflammation. Is that what we're saying? Beer helps with inflammation.
oh gosh, oh, this is dangerous. It's sort of, okay, it's sort of like this. Weightlifting has a similar effect. So when you weightlift and you're pumping iron, you're doing curls for the girls, which I know you do. You're
Hey.
doing curls for the girls. You are physically damaging your bicep muscle.
Okay.
Muscle fibers are tearing and
Like
getting
a
injured.
hormetic response type of situation.
You're damaging the muscle. That signals repair mechanisms in the body, and the muscle that results from that is built up to be bigger, better, stronger.
So I
Right?
need to drink
So
more beer more often.
sure.
And I'll have
The
and my
key
stomach will continue to get stronger, it sounds like.
the key with this sort of stuff is that the dose makes the poison.
Yeah.
So, in the case of alcohol, if you have a single serving occasionally, like if you had a beer every other day, then you would probably get this like net anti-inflammatory effect, which is cool. But if you go out and binge and you have like 5 Guinnesses all in one night, now you're putting a lot of stress on the liver, you're inducing a little bit of leaky gut, my old bestie. And
Yeah.
now you're doing kind of more damage in that moment than your body could really gracefully cope with. And that's where you can feel like crap,
Yeah,
right?
I love I resonate with that so much. Like I hate hangovers, and I love like two Guinness. That's like my sweet spot.
Yeah.
That's where I feel really good, enjoy it. I get a
Yeah.
tiny bit of a buzz. I'm not different, and I can not feel like sleep fine and feel like not
Yeah, yeah,
good.
like you can enjoy it as a like a food or a social thing, and then
Yeah,
it's not like a unhealthy relationship with that thing. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that makes some sense. But yeah, it's probably just the alcohol in general, and you're
yeah,
kind of pissing off your liver and pissing off your gut and pissing off your brain just enough that your
yeah.
motility gets disrupted, and then you get bloating or
That makes sense.
microbiome
It's
shifts.
it's so funny how like I guess I had all these food sensitivities back in the day, and I think, but the more that I learned about the nervous system, I think so much of it was an overload. I don't even want to say stress because I know we want to talk about that, but like it's an overloaded nervous system.
Yeah,
And I guess the kind of the question that I wanted to go into, I wanted to understand what IBS is a little
Mm.
bit more and understand the type of person that would present with IBS.
Yeah. Yeah, like the kind of people I would work with, I guess.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
So obviously, like everybody's different. Every case, every story is going to be different. But oftentimes, IBS is what they call a diagnosis of exclusion. So you go to
Okay.
the doctor, they refer you to the GI doctor, and typically what's going to happen is that that doctor is going to try to rule out or test for anything else, particularly what they call organic disease, which means it's something that we can see or we can test for definitively in the tissues. So we could do a blood test. If the blood test is positive, you have it. If the blood test is negative, you don't have it, right? Or we could go in with a scope or a colonoscopy and we could visually look at your colon. And if it has these characteristics, then we call it ulcerative colitis. If it does not,
Okay.
right? And so they'll typically screen you out initially for like celiac disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, maybe obstruction, whatever. But that's kind of the trifecta, usually is like IBD and celiac disease that they'll rule out. If they go through all that and they don't see anything wrong with you and they don't have any testing that's like noteworthy and relevant to go off of, they'll say, good news, you just have IBS. And that's kind of it for a lot of people. You might get a prescription for like an antispasmodic medication to try to relax the muscles in your gut. You might get a prescription laxative like Linzess if you're constipated. You might be told to take like an anti-diarrheal over the counter if you have diarrhea. Maybe if the doctor is really like really hip, they'll tell you to make sure to eat enough fiber. And they
Yeah.
might hand you a handout for the low FODMAP diet
Okay.
and say,
FODMAP
hey,
is like a Western medical diet doctor?
yeah, I mean, so the low FODMAP diet has a ton of research, actually.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
very well supported diet for symptomatic management of IBS, particularly IBSD, diarrhea based symptoms, much less so for constipation. The thing
It's
is, it was
it's
never meant to be a long term diet,
oh.
and it can be very difficult to do well. And if you don't do it well, which most people don't, you have a higher risk of nutritional deficiencies, fiber insufficiencies, and it just kind of makes you hate life a little bit because
Mhm.
low FODMAP, when you do a strict version of it, that means no onion, no garlic, no brassica vegetables like Brussels sprouts,
Mhm.
no apples, no avocado, no watermelon, no mangoes, no mushrooms. There's a laundry list a mile long of the no foods in the low FODMAP world. So the idea is that you eliminate the foods for 2 to 6 weeks. If that helped with your symptoms, then you proceed with the reintroduction phase and you kind of like systematically reintroduce foods to try to
Mhm.
figure out which foods really were triggery for you and which ones
Mhm.
were not. And the goal is to broaden out your diet as much as humanly possible by the end of that
Yep.
introduction phase. A lot of people, though, again, they don't have guidance when they do it, or they are told that they're doing low FODMAP for the sake of starving SIBO or treating SIBO, which, by the way, is unequivocally scientifically false.
Mm.
Um, but they're either told that they're doing the diet for the wrong reasons, or they're given inadequate advice and guidance, and so they don't know. And so I tend to work with a lot of people who've been doing the low FODMAP diet for a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years.
In
It,
what we know by, I imagine, because I did this, when I went to look at the FODMAP diet and to do that, I was definitely doing it the wrong way. So I love that you're calling that out. And, I saw that I could only eat like 2.5 spears of asparagus. And I'm like, hell no, I can't do that. I'm just going to go carnivore. And instead of looking at it like it's a crutch or a cast that I'm wearing part time for
mm-hmm,
6 weeks, I was like, oh, my symptoms went away. I had psoriasis on my face,
mm,
and I hated that so much that I was like, oh, then I'll just eat meat and salt for the rest of my life.
yeah.
And when we avoid those things for so long, I imagine that tells, I know if with symptoms, if I'm constantly trying to fix and figure out the symptoms and avoid them and I make them this demon, which I did that, all of that, then reintroduction's got to be a son of a bitch. And getting people off of that that's why they need people like you.
I didn't want to ruin the audio quality, but you made me speak when the when the desk was lowering, so hopefully the audio comes out okay.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, it's a bugger. I'm going to be honest. Like the deeper the hole that you dug, the bigger the ladder you need to climb out of it.
Wow.
And I've worked with people who have been on a very restrictive diet, eating 10 foods or fewer for years.
Yeah.
And it's like your machinery, right? Like bile and enzymes and whatnot, your machinery, your microbiome, your metabolism, your nervous system hasn't seen these foods in years. And now you're trying to reintroduce something. Oh, and by the way, you're terrified of that food, right? And it can be a real bugger to try to reintroduce foods when you get into that sticky situation. Versus if you kind of get the proper guidance in the first place, like, okay, we're going to do the FODMAP diet. It's a symptomatic tool. It's not treating the problem. It's not curing the problem. It's not that these foods are bad. It's just we're going to experiment with this as a symptomatic lever that we can pull on. You do it for 4 weeks. Did it help you? Yes or no? Yes, it did. Okay, let's systematically bring in one food at a time and see what you can tolerate with the goal of diversifying, right? Like you do that and the reintroduction can go fairly smoothly and you could go about it with very little like fear and anxiety because there should be some education along the way in that process. But again, if you're told, like I've had clients and patients over the years who were told, if you so much as look at a FODMAP, you are feeding the SIBO and you're going to be stuck with SIBO for the rest of your GD life. And that is why you have such a tough case of SIBO.
Oh yeah.
That's why, because you looked at garlic one time. And
Oh
similarly
yeah.
with Candida, right? Like if you believe that you're doing
Sugar
the
becomes the problem with candida, right?
just carbs in general, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like if you believe that you ingesting any morsel of carbohydrate is feeding the Candida,
You
then
and
of
ugh.
course you're going to be terrified of that. And now good luck reintroducing something that you're terrified of.
So this was me, when and I'm just now reintroducing foods. Like, I mean, I was saying I was having beer. I mean, that would have been pizza, ice cream. I mean, my diet's 80% clean most of the time, but 20% of the time I like to have foods that I hadn't had in a long time. But I
Yeah.
remember a time when I would go before gluten-free menus, before gluten-free options. They used to be like eating cardboard if it was gluten-free back in the day. There wasn't gluten-free menus. And I would go to nice restaurants and I would pull them aside and I'd say, "Can I see your manager?" And they'd come out and I go, "So that there's not a medical emergency, can you guarantee that there is no gluten in your food?" And they look at you like you're going to break out a lawsuit, and that's kind of what you're threatening at that point. But that's the level of hypervigilance that I had.
Yeah.
So if you had a client, which this sounds like this is your person, and they're coming to you and they're eating a carnivore only, I can't think of anything more restrictive.
Yeah.
Maybe a vegan diet, but I imagine a vegan diet being more
The vegan
things
diet
in it.
usually is more diverse than carnivore.
How do
Carnivore,
you
you're
where do
down
you
to,
start with someone like that? So the person that's listening to that, I imagine that's part of my career here. What do you tell that person? Where how do you? It sounds like it's got to be a mixture of what I would do, brain retraining and nervous system, like learning to meet this stuff. Like it sounds like a lot to unpack.
yeah, it's a lot. And I think it depends on the person. Yeah, where do you start with those people? I think there's the one side of yeah, like examining your relationship with food, the reasons why you got to this diet, what
Absolutely.
what your goals are moving forward. Like I remember I had a guy who registered for my program and he was doing the carnivore diet. And then after he registered, after he, paid the money, he started coming to the Q&As, it became abundantly clear that he never wanted to get off the carnivore diet. He was perfectly happy eating that way for the rest of his life, despite having raging diarrhea, by the way.
Oh yeah, I
And
did. I did when I was on that.
and so we ended up parting ways, and I gave him a refund and sent him on his merry way because it was like I think there's been like a miscommunication. My belief, I guess, like my belief about nutrition and how this all works is that we need to get not only plant foods back in your diet, but a variety of plant foods. And we need to get it
Yep.
in such a quantity that you meet your fiber needs every day. And
Yeah.
so really, I don't even just want you eating plant foods. I want you to have a very plant food forward diet. And if if your goal is to stay on the carnivore diet because you've been brainwashed, frankly, into thinking that's the world's most perfect diet, like I'm not your person, right? So I think that's step one is like examining, do you want to get off of the carnivore diet or do you want to stay on it? Assuming you want to get off of that diet, I think, yeah, examining like your beliefs around food, your beliefs around your body. Like, do you believe that you're capable of being healthy? Do you
Yep.
believe that your
Yeah.
body wants to heal?
Mm.
Do you think that you're fighting a war with your microbiome? Or do you acknowledge that your microbiome is part of you and you're all on the same team, right?
Wow.
Like,
Good stuff there.
yeah, like, journal some of that shit first.
Yeah.
Then, I oftentimes with people who are in that position, I will start them on some amount of herbs or some supplements to try to just kind of prepare their body and get them ready for
Like
reintroductions.
HCl, bile supplements, and enzymes. Like,
Maybe, yeah, maybe that sort of stuff that could be in the mix. I was thinking more along the lines of things that induce immune tolerance. So things that basically tell the immune system, hey, everything's cool, man. You don't need to react to everything and
cannabis.
anything.
It sounds like cannabis.
No, so like vitamin D as an
Oh, really?
example.
Okay.
Yeah, like if the person is blatantly deficient in vitamin D, like that might be a first step, for example.
Yeah.
Um, Also, and this I've had mixed results with, but sometimes it's helpful. One of the ideas, the main idea of eating fiber is that you eat fiber, we can't digest that fiber.
Hmm.
It's unabsorbable to us. We lack the machinery and the enzymes to break that down. But our microbes have the enzymes and the machinery to break that down. So it becomes leftovers in the colon and it becomes
Hmm.
food for the microbiome.
Is it
And
prebiotic fiber? Is that what it becomes?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you feed the microbiome, when you feed these good bacteria in particular, they make nice, happy anti-inflammatory chemicals for you. And then we get to benefit from those chemicals, namely short chain fatty acids. Sometimes I'll start people on a butyrate supplement with the
Okay. Yeah.
idea of, hey, if your microbiome hasn't been generating butyrate for you because you're not fucking feeding them,
Well, and you're
maybe,
not eating carbohydrates. That's also producing more butyrate, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody's in that predicament where they're on like a carnivore or close to carnivore diet and they're eating so little fiber, sometimes I'll try to throw in a butyrate supplement just to like start giving them some butyrate before they're
Hmm.
making it themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes that helps people, sometimes it doesn't, but that's usually something in the mix. And then, and then I think that people have different styles. I've had some clients over the years where they kind of wrap their head around the idea that this isn't going to be easy or fun, and I might just have to be really bloated for a couple of months, and I'm just going to
Yeah.
push through. I'm just going to rip off the band-aid and I'm going to push through and I'm going to do this. And honestly, those are the people that I think have the best results. I've
Oh,
had,
really? I was going to
yeah,
say that sounds like it could go, and they're just willing to accept that their symptoms are going to happen. That plays
yep,
right into my world.
yeah.
You're going to have symptoms, and you're going to just do what I love to do. And damn it, I like some pizza, and I like having my
Well,
vegetables or whatever. And I'm
yeah,
gonna,
and like I'm gonna do what needs to be done, right?
yeah,
Like I'm just gonna suck it up. I'm gonna do it. And I talked to one of these folks a couple years ago now because I used to do these like alumni success panel things on my YouTube channel, and I remember one of them. She was saying, Allie, she was saying, yeah, I wore like stretchy black yoga pants to work for a couple months. And
I
like
love that.
I just knew I was going to be a bit bloated and distended and I just decided screw it, I don't care. I need to do what's right by my body and I need to listen to Dr. DiNezza and she did and she was feeling great after, but again, there was a learning curve. Like she didn't feel great for a period of time, but she knew why and she understood again, like my body and my microbiome hasn't seen this food in a really long time. I have to wake up the microbes, I have to wake up the machinery, and we need to relearn how to process this food. And I just have to push through. Um,
I
but
love
that,
it.
honestly, oftentimes that goes so much more smoothly than the people who are like, okay,
Micromanaging and
yep,
controlling through fear.
I kid you not. Like sometimes people will present plans to me where they're like, okay, I'm going to start, I'm not going to eat one forkful of broccoli because that still scares me. I'm going to chew the broccoli and then I'm going to spit it out.
Oh
And
my God,
that's
that would have been me. That'd have been me. Yeah,
and that is
100%.
day one. If that goes fine and I feel good and normal, then day two, I'm going to actually swallow the bite of broccoli. If that goes okay, the next day I'll have two bites of broccoli. And it can like take a week to introduce a single food when you're doing it this way.
Stressing the shit out of your nervous system. It sounds like
Shit out of you.
education and awareness. Once you got the information, you know this is going to be tough. You build the capacity to be with that uncomfortable stuff, and you
Yep.
accept and you allow and you trust your body to
You
do your
bust out the
thing.
yoga pants
Bust
and
out the yoga
you
pants,
do it.
whatever, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I will say that's easier in the IBS, SIBO, et cetera world. If I had somebody with like ulcerative colitis, where there's a very genuine risk that if the disease flares bad enough, they could lose their colon or a part of their colon and like have it be bad enough to have part of their colon surgically removed. I am admittedly more cautious with my IBD folks,
Yeah.
particularly colitis, because again, like you fuck around and you find out with autoimmune diseases, particularly something like UC. So I will just preface that. If somebody with IBD is listening, it can be a little bit different and maybe a little bit more cautious with that world. But I'm talking like IBS, maybe SIBO, maybe leaky gut, maybe candida, maybe you've thought about a parasite cleanse, maybe you don't know what the hell's going on with you and you've whittled your diet down over years and now you're wondering where to go. I
Call
think
Nikki. Don't start. Don't. What I would have done, Nikki, is listen to this, and I'd be taking all these notes. I'd be taking vitamin D, butyrate. I'd start throwing Hail
yeah,
and like going
yeah,
back on my whatever diet that I wanted to be on, and I'd
yeah.
just yeah. Then you're in the ditch, and that's why people like Nikki exist because people like me that aren't as educated on this stuff. I know my way around these things, but I was just throwing Hail Marys and hoping for the
Yeah.
best.
Oh, everybody by this point has a supplement graveyard,
Yeah.
right? Like the things that, oh, I saw this parasite cleanse from this TikTok person I follow, and I did the parasite cleanse for 2 weeks and it didn't cure me, and now the rest of the bottle is up on the shelf. Or like my podcast co-host Amy, we were just talking the other day about a woman she's working with right now, and she's terrified of constipation. She's convinced that she's going to get an obstruction. You know what?
Tell the
Like,
story about your friend for all the folks that are scared
oh,
about instruction.
yes. So my best friend from high school is now mildly famous because of my podcast. I told her this. She doesn't care. My best friend from high school poops 3 times a month. I have offered to help her numerous times. I
So
have
like every 10 days.
no, like I'm not pushy about it, but like I offer, and I think she knows I would help her. I mailed her a probiotic once. She took it. Like she wasn't super stoked or against it. She took it and she said thanks for sending it. But she just still like doesn't give a shit. And you'll talk to her and you would never know. Like she goes to work, she has a husband, she has kids, she does chores around the house, she takes, her brother play. Like she lives a life. You would never know. She has blatant iron deficiency anemia,
Mm.
hypothyroidism. She's constipated like you wouldn't believe, pooping 3 times a week. And you talk to her and you're like, don't you want to poop more? Or
The
like
body is so resilient. Like she doesn't take a shit and doesn't give a
the
shit.
mind. The mind is resilient. Like, I don't know, people should study her. But yeah, you talk to her and you're like, don't you want to poop better? And she's like, yeah, that would be nice. But that's like the end of
Wow.
it. She's like,
And then you got
not.
my crowd over here that we are so hyper
I know.
fixed. My body is so I'm unlearning this, being so sensitive that I could feel, I had Lyme disease and I can feel a tick laying on my back.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, there's one right there. And that level of awareness and focusing on sensations, that's just sending the wrong signal to the nervous system. There's a threat, and that's just keeping us
Well,
in
it makes
activity.
day-to-day existence incredibly stressful
Yeah.
and difficult.
Sometimes ignorance is bliss, though, right? Like, it sounds like it.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, here, I'll give you another story that's not my own. So there's a YouTube video. I think it was published in like 2010. So it's like OG. But there was this physical therapist guy in Australia, and he was giving a lecture about the mechanisms of chronic pain and like
Hmm.
how pain happens, like neurologically speaking. And he told a story. And again, he's in Australia. And he's telling the story, and he goes, I'm avid camper. I camp in like the bush in Australia. I have all my life. And he was on a camping trip with some of his mates, and he's walking barefoot from the campsite down to the river, pond, whatever it was, but they were going to go swimming. And he's walking down the path, maybe with a friend, to go to this watering area. And he feels like a twig or branch or something brush up against the side of his ankle. And again, he's walking in the bush and he's like going down a path, right? So he feels a brush on his ankle, doesn't think anything of it. He comes to 2 days later in the hospital. He was the first survivor of, I think it was like the brown,
Black
like,
Mamba.
no, it was like a brown snake. It was like an incredibly venomous snake. And he was like the first known survivor of that snake bite. A freaking snake bit his leg and he felt no pain. He was just like, oh, it was like a branch that brushed up against my leg. Wild. He
Wow.
wasn't conditioned for it. Then cut to like a year later or whatever, he's back at the campsite with his friends, getting ready to camp. He's going down a trail through the bush, going, to the neighboring campsite or whatever. And he feels something, and he described it as searing, hot, agonizing 10 out of 10 pain in his lower
Which is
leg.
like childbirth is like 7 or 8 out of 10 or something like that, right? Like, and 10 out of 10. Like,
Mhm.
I heard this pain scale. There's this movie. Have you seen the show called Beef on Netflix?
No.
I think you would probably laugh at it. But the lady goes in and she's like, "What's your pain level?" And she's like, like an 8 out of 10." She's like, "Honey, if you were 8 out of 10, you wouldn't be able to speak. Like childbirth is like 7 or 8 out of 10. Like we're talking about
Yeah.
something else is right up here, which I can't imagine something being stronger than childbirth. But
Yeah.
it just
No,
goes.
it's,
You said it. Your conditioning is a big part of this, and like, what have you been
yeah.
exposed to or expecting? What are you anticipating?
Well, and so that's the thing, right? In the first story, he was in a familiar place. He'd been camping a million times. He was conditioned to believe that that was a non-painful stimuli, and it was just like a twig or something brushing his leg, but it ended up being something incredibly dangerous and painful. And
Hmm.
his nervous system then internalized that. Next time this happens and he has a 10 out of 10 agonizing, burning, searing pain, he drops to the ground. He's clutching his leg. He's like, oh my God, it
Yeah,
hurts.
yeah.
It was a stick.
It's like it was a stick.
It was a stick. It wasn't
Yeah,
a snake that time. It was a
thought
stick,
it thought it
but
was a shark bite.
his nervous system had learned from that traumatic, awful experience and getting hospitalized that any sort of sensation on the outside of the leg in the forest where we are right now, that is danger. And so it's really fascinating when you get into the world of chronic pain. That's a whole topic for
Well,
another
well,
day,
think
but
about how this relates to what we're talking about and reintroducing foods. If you
mhm.
had an experience where, for me, I had chronic anxiety, and my first health coach brought me gluten-free beer and said, "This is why you're having anxiety." Now, the anxiety was so crazy that I was so willing to avoid it that my nervous system would go nuts. I remember when I started having beers again with my buddies, I'd drive to go see them, and my gut would go into a knot. Now, I have what we've been talking about, education and awareness. So I started to feel that, and I would go, okay, we're going to let that be here. We're going to have a little bit of beer, and we're going to have some water, and we're going to enjoy
Yeah.
ourselves. And I would have fatigue the next day. I would have what I would call a hangover from a half of a beer. But over
Well,
time, I showed my system a little bit more accepting and allowing that it's okay.
well, it's your nervous system. Even if you didn't have a reaction to the gluten, the stress of ingesting something that you thought was dangerous was so stressful to your system, and your nervous system was just tightly wound.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was probably this like refractory period afterwards where you felt almost hungover from it, but
Yeah.
it was because of the stress,
The stress. Yeah.
not the beer itself.
No,
And
no.
that,
Your thoughts, your behavior,
mhm,
your anticipation, the constant scanning, the fear, the
trying to
now I need to fix
control.
it, and
Well, and to go back to that point, actually, one of the things I mentioned before we hit record that I wanted to talk about is this idea of telling people to listen to their body and
yes,
how that can be very tricky with
yes,
somebody
it
who has a
can.
lot of anxiety or OCD kind of stuff and like food fear because you start getting this thing going on where like you said, like you are feeling symptoms while you're consuming that food. And
Mm-hmm.
you accidentally can very easily attribute those symptoms to the food itself or the
Yep.
beverage in this case,
Yep.
rather than acknowledging, oh, I'm like 9 out of 10 stressed right now. And
Yep.
I look calm on the outside, but on the inside, I'm freaking out. And my nervous system is jacked, and I'm like way out of my window of tolerance. And like, oh, maybe that's why I'm having these symptoms. But again, like it's very easy, and I've seen this in like functional medicine. I see this in like nutrition circles. I remember one time I did my nutritional certification, and they taught us this technique where you have your client sit down, and before they eat any of their food, they take their pulse and they measure their pulse for 30 seconds or whatever you want to have them do. Then they eat the food. Then they take their pulse again. And if your pulse goes up X amount, I forget, it was like
30
15 beats,
points. It was 30
15
points.
beats, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
If your pulse goes up by X amount after you eat that food, then that means you're having a reaction to that
Eureka.
food
Yep.
and you have a sensitivity to that food. Oh my God, what a nightmare.
There was
Like,
an
and I,
app that Dave Asprey did where you would read the pulse in the back of your finger and do this thing.
yeah, nightmare, horrible
Nightmare.
idea. And so, but here's the thing, okay? I'm going to play devil's advocate to what I'm trying to skirt around because
Yeah.
it's sounding like I'm saying, oh, just ignore your body, don't think about anything, have no awareness whatsoever. That's not the goal. I think that, and forgive me if this comes out judgmental sounding, but I feel like most people will kind of understand what I'm getting at here. We all have an aunt, an uncle, a parent, a sibling, whatever, who is obese and or diabetic and or hypertensive, and they have like metabolic syndrome kind of stuff, and they will eat a giant plate of pasta at Olive Garden, and then they will go home and pass out and need to take a nap after this massive plate of pasta, or they'll eat like a bagel or sugar cereal for breakfast, and then they'll wonder why they have no energy at 10 a.m. and they need coffee at 10 a.m. And it's like, we all have people in our lives, I think, that we would love for them to have more self awareness and like health awareness. Like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe if I eat literal sugar snap cereal for breakfast, maybe my blood sugar is spiking and
Yeah. I
dumping,
can't
and that's
understand why
why
I'm
I'm
falling asleep at
tired.
2 p.m. every day and drooling on myself at my desk.
Yeah, or like again, or like the family member who's like, obese and diabetic and hypertensive, and they eat a massive plate of pasta, and then their blood sugar crashes, and then they're like, gee, I wonder why I'm so tired and why I'm obese and diabetic. It's like, well, but could you correlate those two? So I think that some degree of self-awareness, body awareness, health awareness, like makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's the two extremes. There's like the people I just painted the picture of who are blissfully oblivious and
Yeah.
they're sick because of it, or like sicker than they need to be because of it. And then there's the folks that we tend to work with more often who are so hypervigilant and trying to control, and they're trying to find answers. They're trying to diagnose. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to understand. And like every little bubble, every little itch, every little
Yeah.
sensation they think is a bad thing. And they wind themselves up in such a tizzy about it, and they don't realize that they're doing it to themselves to some degree. Like they're generating more and more symptoms because they're so freaked out and hypervigilant about it.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's like I one time with a student, I proposed something wild. She was one with a lot of like food control issues, food fear issues. And I remember I proposed the idea that she eat a couple of Doritos. You would have thought I asked her to go buy 8 ball crack cocaine off the street and do it in front of me. Oh my God. It was like unfathomable to her. And I told her, I was like, okay, see, the test is me viewing your response when I tell you to eat a couple of Doritos. If
Yeah.
you react that way, like so fearfully and viscerally, and like I just said something totally alien and foreign, that's kind of diagnostic in my opinion. Like that means you have a lot of fucked up storytelling about food and your relationship with food and food fears. And like I personally, my goal in life is to eat a healthy diet 80+% of the time, but have the flexibility neurologically, metabolically, microbiome wise, whatever. I want to have the flexibility that I can eat the Doritos, I can eat the brownie, I can eat the whatever. And within the confines of my situation, it just needs to be a gluten-free brownie. That's all.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've kind of like this whole map here that because this is what I do with my clients. Kind of, we want to see everything, and I'm kind of take it back to what you said about the carnivore diet, and that is it's fucking brainwashing. And if you have built a life on fear and shame to motivate yourself, if you have never experienced safety, that's me, didn't have that language. Congratulations, you get to learn that in your 30s and 40s, like you're learning Spanish. Because if we don't have safety, then we're going to use those compulsive ways of fixing ourselves or helping ourselves stay safe, control, black or white thinking, all or nothing. And the wellness industry is waiting for you with open arms to go, we got solutions. And whether it's well intentioned or not, what I did is I took all that information, I soaked it all up. I listened to every podcast, every book. That's why I'm able to sit here and talk with Dr. Nikki and have somewhat of an understanding of what she's talking about, because I was so terrified and hypervigilant that I learned all this stuff. That loaded the gun and I pointed at myself, because now it's fear, it's shame, and I would have been the person avoiding the Dorito that you're talking about. But once we learn these patterns and understand how to feel safe, how to express ourselves, how to see how fear and shame are motivating us, and seeing the education and the brilliance, the resilience that we have learned, well, then we can completely flip that script. And I guess the question that I keep going back to is how much of IBS, IBD, I
Mm.
don't know if Crohn's and autoimmune stuff fit into this, but how much of that SIBO is stress?
Mm.
And is it
Yeah.
like that's it, Mitch, or is it like there's a component
End
of
of show.
physics,
No.
or is it like your DNA, your genetics, your physical stuff, like chemicals, like
Yeah. I think we rarely get the luxury of having a case, or at least for me, I rarely have the luxury of seeing a case that is just cut dry one thing.
yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
but because like humans are complex and we're all kind of chuckleheads at the end of the day, right? Like we're trying to do the thing that's easiest and the cheapest, and like we still want to have our beer and our brownies and what like we're silly gooses. But what I will say is the two biggest facets for people with IBS. And I would say this, I think this does extend to IBD and celiac disease, both of which are autoimmune in nature. I think it still extends to them. I think that the two biggest facets for IBS in particular, though, are stress, nervous system regulation or
Yeah,
dysregulation, vagal tone, etc. kind of stuff. And
yep.
there's like a
I would
million
say all
different,
those go together. Same
yeah,
thing.
it's all the same ball of stuff, right? Like mental health, anxiety, depression, OCD, eating disorders, disordered eating patterns, fucked up relationship with food, fucked up relationship with other humans in your life and the world, and you're like your place in the world and how you see your body and how you see food.
All that. Yep.
It's all a big knotted up ball of stuff.
Yep.
But that is one of the biggest facets. The other thing is nutrition.
Hmm.
And and this is why nutrition is still a huge part of what I do, but it's not nutrition that you've been taught by the functional medicine people and the naturopaths, where you're looking for the bad boogeyman food. And if you just cut out the blueberries, then you're going to be miraculously cured. And oh my God, you were sensitive to blueberries
That's
all
just feeding
along.
right back into the pattern of
Fear.
hypervigilance and fear.
Bingo. It's more of like um, 95% of the American public does not eat enough dietary fiber. That's huge,
Hmm.
right? Like step one, if you have
Yeah.
GI symptoms, make sure you're eating enough fiber. And they have apps. They have like MyFitnessPal, they have Chronometer, they have apps. You can log your nutrition for a couple days, just get a rough idea, or even do like a back of the napkin calculation, right? Like if you eat if you eat Doritos, just look on the back of the hashtag not sponsored by Doritos, by the way. Um, I should choose another food for the next example, but like look at the back of the package, look, see how much fiber. Okay, write that on the napkin for the day. Oh, I ate an apple. Just Google search how much fiber is in an apple. All right, put that on the napkin. Like you could even do it super informally if you don't want an app. But make sure you're eating enough fiber.
How much would you, is it like is it individual and that's hard to answer, or is it like roughly get X amount?
Probably it's probably a little bit individual, but as a rough guideline, you could use the RDA. So for women, it's 25 grams of fiber per day. For men, it's 38 grams of fiber per
Did you
day.
say 28 and 38?
25 and 38.
25, 25
Yeah.
and 38.
Yeah. And that's adults
That's
between the
quite a bit
age
of
of
fiber, right?
it's actually pretty challenging to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's,
And what
that's
do like modern plants kind of like the hybridization of wheat and the minerals being depleted
mm,
from the soil? Is there a similar thing with fiber going on, or is it?
I don't think so. I don't think
Yeah.
that the fiber's getting affected so much. But what I will say is the low FODMAP diet and the gluten-free diet both have good
And the
human
carnivore diet.
evidence.
Let's don't knock that out.
Well, probably that too, but I was going to say both of those diets have good human evidence to support the idea that when you go gluten-free or you go low FODMAP, you're reducing prebiotic fiber content and you cause dysbiosis by doing those diets, or you cause a deepened state of dysbiosis by doing either of those diets.
I
It's
feel like
more,
that's when my stomach acid got the lowest, is doing those type of diets. And I just like would have so much lack of motility, like things were just
yeah.
kind of sitting is what it felt like.
Mhm.
And when I
Yeah.
started doing nervous, now I'm not, obviously they're connected, but when I started doing nervous system work, I was doing every protocol, supplements, gut
Yeah.
stuff. What would help me was massage, so calming down a little
Mm.
bit. And then when I learned how to express and meet different things, I would always burp, and it's like I had these fascial, like my digestion. I see kind of doing this, and I would, when you're in a somatic session or therapy, sometimes burping is my thing, and that's when I started getting stuff back.
Yeah.
But that
That's
makes
funny. Your
sense.
body was letting go
100%, and so that
literally
makes
at
sense.
that
But I
point.
love the fiber thing because I think that is super helpful, and that's something my doctor was always trying to. One of my favorite fiber things that helped me when I was going through this was mung beans.
Mm-hmm.
Loved mung beans. I had it came
Yeah.
through. I learned this through what's the Ayurvedic stew that you
Oh,
make?
kitchery.
Kitchery. That was
Yeah.
my like go-to, but like that would dry me out because it had so many drying herbs in it. I can't
Mm.
remember exactly if I did it all the time, and that would be me. But then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I can have like black beans and rice, and I can have some of the mung beans, and I can bring some
Yeah.
of these things, and that was the chia seeds and more vegetables. And over time,
Yeah.
I would say that was one of the building blocks. And when my stomach doesn't feel good now, I've got like I had some today for lunch, like black beans and rice, and like a couple like different herbs that are built into there, and I think fiber does go a long way. I think that's a huge. I was going to ask you like,
It
what are
does.
some of your favorite foods? And it sounds like some.
Ooh.
What are? I guess that is a good question. What would you?
Well, okay. Well, to that point though, briefly, so again, like 95% of us don't get enough dietary fiber. So
Yeah,
that's one example.
yeah,
Also, a lot of vitamins and minerals. We're not getting enough of those either,
mm,
right? And like it's something like 94% of the American population doesn't get enough potassium, and like
mm.
70 or 80%
The
of
supplements are back on now.
Americans. Right. Yes. The point is not to run out and get a supplement for each of these nutrients.
Yeah,
Ideally, you want to get them from food primarily. And I'll give an easy example. So you might look at a label on a supplement or a protein powder or something, and you might see, I'm going to get all of my vitamin E for the day. Fantastic.
right.
Check that box. But you don't realize there are 8 compounds, 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienols.
Yep,
Together, we call all of them together vitamin E. But
yep,
when you get it as a supplement, the supplement vitamin E almost always is one of those 8 compounds, alpha
yep,
tocopherol.
yep.
It's not to say alpha tocopherol is bad and it will treat signs of overt vitamin E deficiency, but it's also not the same as getting vitamin E from like wheat and almonds and sunflower seeds either. So we have to stop equating vitamin supplements with actual food. Like,
Similar thing with like vitamin D, taking it supplementally, getting it from the sun, having a SNP where you're not able to absorb vitamin D, and you got to take it with the sun. There's
yeah.
all these nuances.
Well, and then you get like the circadian rhythm benefits and the mental health benefits of the fresh air and the vitamin D and the sunshine too.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even ignoring that kind of fancy stuff, it's like there's so much more to sunshine than just vitamin D. There's so much more to a carrot than just the beta carotene.
Yeah.
And we're kind of doing this like weird modern medicine influenced bastardized version of nutrition when we just say, "Oh, I'm going to take all these fancy supplements." But you'd be surprised how common nutritional insufficiencies or blatant deficiencies are in
And when you
the food
correct
that we're
those, the
eating.
body, I mean, I think that that's one of the things that functional medicine is that what functional medicine does well, you would say?
Well,
And
no,
I know we've got
because
like 5 minutes left. I don't want to open too big of a can of
I
worms.
know. No, so functional medicine is good at loading you up with the vitamin and mineral supplements, and they're good at teaching you to cut out a million foods.
Mm.
So if we're going with this hypothesis that I presented that the vitamins and minerals in food are superior to that found in supplements,
No, well,
then I don't
I
think
think
functional
correcting
medicine is
your
doing us many
deficiencies if you're
favors.
not able to get that from food, obviously that's what we
Yeah.
want to do.
I mean, like,
I know for me, I feel if somebody says, "Hey, Mitch, your whatever is low," I'm going to find that food and I'm going to bring that in, and my body loves that. If it is a supplement, I'd say 5 to 7, 10 out of 10. My body's like, don't like that.
yeah. Oh, and again, like it makes you wonder why. Like our body is used to the synergy in our food,
Yep.
right? Like you don't just extract the beta carotene and slap it in a pill. Like our body is used to seeing butternut squash and carrots and peppers and the actual foods. And there's probably like cofactors and other nutrients and other phytochemicals and antioxidants and fibers and polyphenols that go into that bell pepper that you ate, and that's affecting how your body and your microbiome is interacting with that beta carotene.
And who you're eating it with and the environment and how you feel about it and all that good
Yeah,
stuff too. Like everything
huge.
is so we think we're so damn smart with, oh, we found a deficiency. Now we're going to give you one type of vitamin E and see you
Yeah.
later. Thank you. Give me my $500.
Yeah. Again, it's like a very ego forward world.
Yeah.
I think medicine and scientific research in general, functional medicine definitely as well. And yeah, it's like, who died and made pure encapsulations the only source
Yeah.
of folate
I
in the
think Pure
world.
Encapsulations even is run by some big, huge corporation now, right?
Yeah, I think it's Nestle, if I
Yeah.
remember right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will
So it's
say I was
Pure.
nervous when that went through many moons ago. I think it was like 2018. I haven't seen their quality shift in.
It's like Heinz took
Yeah.
over. One of my certifications is
Oh, yeah.
Primal Health Coach, and Primal Kitchen is the same kind of conglomerate. And now Heinz taking that in. I haven't seen it change, but I don't know.
Hopefully it doesn't change. But yeah, it's my point is again, like heaven heavens knows functional medicine likes to tell people they have MTHFR and
Motherfucker gene.
they have to I mean, I have two of them. Like it's not I assure you, there's another topic for another day, Mitch. MTHFR ain't special. A
Mm.
lot of us
Love that.
Caucasian people have it. I've got two copies. I'm what they call compound heterozygous, and I'm not taking methylated folate, and I feel just fine. But
Yeah, I didn't feel good taking methylated folate. It gave me a lot of anxiety.
yeah, some people don't. But I guess to circle back though is it it feels like we're doing the right thing, and it feels like we're doing the good thing, giving people these vitamins and supplements and minerals and like, yeah, that might be better than being overtly deficient, but why don't we teach people which foods contain folate
Yeah.
and how they can maximize their absorption of folate? And, oh, do we need to agonize over why you're iron deficient and hypothesize that the parasites are stealing your iron or the SIBO is stealing your iron and that's why you're deficient? Or do we look at your diet and determine that you're not eating even 50% of your body's need for iron and that's why you're deficient?
And I think that's why I wanted to get you on the podcast and talk about this because you've been around the block, you know your
Mhm.
shit literally and figuratively. And if
Well,
people, if they're dealing with some of these restrictive diets and they're coming out of it, it sounds like you have they could use your help, but it sounds like you have a course as well.
sort of. So I'm in a weird limbo with my business where I had a group coaching program for many years called FODMAP Freedom, and the name is because I'm very good at helping people reintroduce high FODMAP foods in particular. Um, I have been working through some stuff in my business, and I'm at a point where I'm not enrolling anymore for FODMAP Freedom.
Okay.
Um, so that's not going to happen again. I'm in the process of building the next thing that'll be even better, but I'm just changing some of like how it's offered and how it's run and like what it looks like for me to kind of do that. So pending follow, check out my website periodically. I'll get something up soon. So right now I'm just working one-on-one with people and
That's what I was
just
going to ask.
yeah,
Other
just
than
doing that.
the Microbiome Queen podcast and the 200 and some episodes you guys have done, so
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
one on one. If you want to work with Nikki now, can you tell them how to reach out and that kind of thing?
Yes, but can I share one more thing before we do our official wrap up? I
Absolutely.
I know I'm the one with a hard cutoff here,
Yeah,
but I just
I'm trying to cut it off for you.
no, I appreciate that, but I'm gonna take one more liberty. So I don't remember if you've heard my coconut yogurt story. I
Yeah, I
think
want to
I
hear the
might
coconut
have
yogurt
I
story.
might have told it to you off camera at some point.
You told me this is kind of like Bert
Yeah.
Kreischer telling his Russian story where he robs the Russian mob.
Okay, I'm not familiar
You
with
got to
that
go.
one.
I'll
That
send that to you after this.
topic for another time, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna share a part one first. This part you haven't heard. So for a long time, for about 10 years, I did not eat gluten, dairy, or sesame. And I was very, very strict with those three foods. Potatoes came back in a little bit quicker, but gluten, dairy, and sesame, those came up on food sensitivity testing. I believed it wholeheartedly. I vehemently, firmly believed those were never again foods for me. Well, years ago, they have since closed. We had this great vegan restaurant in Chapel Hill, and it was within walking distance of my office. I don't remember what it was called now, but they had some really really good stuff, and they had gluten free labeled on the menu, so it was very easy to navigate from a gluten and a dairy perspective, right? Because it's vegan.
Yeah.
I just had to be mindful of the sesame thing. So when I would order things, I would ask the waiter, and like, does it have any sesame? Does it have any tahini? Does it have sesame oil? No. Okay, we're good. And so my family and I, my mom and my husband, we all really liked this restaurant. So we would go like once a month. That was our going out place. And I pretty much always got the same dish. I had tried enough things that I landed on this one dish that I really loved. And I ordered it one time. I was with my mom. I ordered it one day, like I usually did. And I had given the guy the shtick about sesame and whatnot. And he goes, "Oh, that's a tahini base, right?" No.
Your favorite meal?
Yeah, I had eaten it numerous times. And he brought out the binder with the ingredient list, and sure enough, it was like a tart, like a savory tart kind of thing. The base for the tart filling was fucking tahini paste.
So did you get a symptom after that, or were you just like, thank God?
So here's the thing. I had eaten it numerous times, never once had a problem from it. So I learned this, and now my body starts going into freak out mode, and my stomach is getting tight and clenching and bloating, and I'm feeling myself go into like fight or flight, and I'm
Yep.
over analyzing it. And oh my God, what was I thinking? Oh my God, those other waiters told me it was safe. Wait, why didn't I have a reaction to it? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I remember I decided to get it anyway. And I decided to up the ante. And they had falafel balls that were crusted with sesame seeds on the outside. And I decided, screw it. I'm gonna get those too. And I was with my mom. I checked my schedule on my phone. I was like, I don't have any patient appointments until it was like 2:30 or 3 p.m. So I was like, worst case scenario, if I have diarrhea, I can camp out of the bathroom for 2 hours after this. I'm golden. I should be good enough to do my remaining appointments for the day. Let's do it. They brought the food, and just seeing the sesame seeds and knowing what was in that tart, again, I could feel myself freaking out. I had to, not being super nervous system informed at this point in my life, but I knew enough. I was like, I can feel how freaked out I am. And I told my mom, I was like, I need to sit here with my eyes closed and do some deep breathing for a couple of minutes. You go ahead and start eating. And my mom is super chill. So I sat there and I did deep breathing, and I ran through it in my head. I'm like, Nick, you've eaten this tart thing minimum a dozen times,
500 times to a dozen times.
and you were fine every single time. Maybe you're okay with sesame now. Maybe you don't have to fear this anymore. Maybe this is how you reintroduce sesame. Just be open-minded to the possibility that this might mean you could eat sesame, and wouldn't that be nice? And I took a few minutes to breathe through it. And I wasn't totally calm, but I was a little bit better. And I dug into the meal. It was freaking delicious and nothing happened. I felt totally
Woo!
fine. I felt fine. But I had to really like stop and pause and reflect and think through it. So that's part one of me learning that food fear played a role in my food reactions. And yeah, so that was number one. A couple years later, then I was at a conference, and it's a functional medicine conference, so they're really good with gluten-free and some dairy-free options and whatnot. And they had a breakfast buffet set out for us before the conference started on day one. And so I'm happy. I love a good buffet, and I will confess I go hog wild when it's an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Get it while you can.
Well, and like I want to get my money's worth. I'm one of those
Yeah.
people. So I get super excited. So I'm loading up my plate like this high, and I'm piling on everything that strikes my fancy. I'm like, ooh, this is going to be so good. And I sit down with this massive plate, and I also got myself a bowl of what was labeled coconut yogurt. And there was like gluten-free granola and berries I put in it. I was happy as a pig in shit. So I sit down, I eat this gigantic meal, so happy, and I'm eating the yogurt last. And I'm thinking to myself, this is really good yogurt. Like really, really good yogurt. And again, I'd been dairy free for like 10 years at this point. I was like, wow, this is really good yogurt. I don't think I've ever had dairy free yogurt that was this good before. And as I'm finishing the bowl of yogurt, it occurs to me, oh, what if it's not dairy free yogurt?
Yeah.
It was
Right.
labeled, it was labeled coconut yogurt. Does that mean coconut flavored yogurt or coconut milk yogurt?
Yeah, I have some of that in my refrigerator right now. Coconut flavored Greek yogurt.
I did not verify which it meant. I just got excited and I felt safe at this conference. And so the first lecture is starting. Bless his heart, the poor man was trying to teach me about cardiovascular stuff. I don't remember a lick of what he said. And I start agonizing over which one was it? Was it dairy? Was it coconut? What do I do? Oh my God, what do I do? And what's going to happen? And I start thinking about if I just ate a whole bowl of yogurt, I'm going to feel terrible. I'm going to have like diarrhea. I'm going to be stuck in the bathroom at this. I'm going to miss the conference. And I'm not, and I love conferences. So I was like, I wanted to go to these lectures, and people are going to like see my shoes in the bathroom under the stall. Cause heaven forbid we have the stall walls go all the way down to the floor. People are going to see my shoes, and they're going to know that I'm in there pooping myself all day. And all of my like doctor friends at this seminar, they're going to know that I was sick all day, and I'm going to stink up the bathroom at a professional seminar. Oh my God, I should have known better. I should have asked. I should have asked. Oh my God. And so all of this is winding up in my head, and the symptoms are starting. I
Yeah.
feel bloated. I visibly see my gut expanding and looking more pregnant. And
Yeah.
I,
Get out the
again,
black yoga pants.
yeah, well, and I start thinking, I'm going to have to unbutton my pants at a professional seminar. This can't happen. I can't walk around with unbuttoned pants. I'm not pregnant. That's not socially acceptable to do that when you're pregnant and you don't have maternity pants yet. Yeah, maybe. But I was like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. And so my stomach was visibly growing. I bloated and like cramping, and I'm convinced. I'm like, yep, I knew it. That was regular dairy yogurt. God damn it. I knew it because now I'm getting symptoms, and that proves my point. And finally, this is going on for like 10 minutes. And finally I realized you're just all up in here. You're not listening to the nice man on stage talking about cardiovascular disease. You're not absorbing any of this. You might as well get up and go ask the people who work for the hotel if they can check on the ingredients. Like, you might as well put yourself out of your misery and confirm what you think is going on and like be done with it. And maybe I need to go back to my hotel room and shit there for the rest of the day. So I was like, all right, I'm not learning a damn thing from that guy. So I kind of gather up some of my stuff. I gather up my empty plate, and I go find somebody who works for the hotel. And I explained the predicament. I said, can you check and see if it was like coconut flavored dairy yogurt or if it was coconut milk based yogurt? And can you let me know? He comes back and he says, yep, ma'am, I was able to confirm it is 100% coconut milk based yogurt. you're good. You're totally good. And I kid you not, Mitch, kid you not, within 60 seconds, all of my symptoms vaporized. As soon as I learned that I was safe and the food was safe, quote unquote, the bloating went away, the cramping, the pain, the abdominal distension that was starting to make me look pregnant, all of it went away and melted away within 60 seconds of learning that the food that I had eaten was actually safe. And that was a huge holy shit moment for me where I was like, oh,
The mind is so
I
strong.
I did that to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like a little bit of an icky thing to think of that
Yeah.
you did it to
What's
yourself.
possible? What's possible
Well,
when
it's
we believe something is true?
yeah, it's huge. It's profound to think that. But to your point earlier, trying to wrap up, and then I had to share those two stories.
Got to. That's
Um,
so funny. Thank you for
so
sharing that. I think that's a great example of how powerful the mind is. And, it's all about safety and beliefs. And that's why this work that we do works. It's
yeah,
neuroplasticity, it's observing our beliefs, it's questioning those, and it's willing to trust the body with accepting and allowing. And some magic can happen. It seems
yeah,
like we've been
yeah.
confirmed.
And like I guess the closing remark to that is for people who are like in this cycle of like food fear, IBS, whatever else, like I've been there.
Same.
I've been there. Maybe not always to the degree. Like I never did carnivore. I never whittled my diet down to 10 foods. Like I wasn't quite to that degree. But a lot of the things I do understand because I was there myself.
Yeah.
But I need to wrap up, so I'll just share. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram. I'm the Gut Microbiome Queen, so you can look me up there. If you just type that in, you should find me. Um, I am in the process of redirecting an old website and launching a new website. I'm one of those people, I've had too many websites and too many emails over my lifetime, and I'm trying to streamline it finally. I just decided to go with nikkidinezza.com.
Oh,
Just
wow. How creative. Love.
myname.com, keeping
Yeah.
it simple. So if you look me up on online, you'll find, the spelling of my Italian last name. But yeah, Nikki,
And your
Nikkii.
Instagram videos are hilarious. I got to check some of those out.
Thank you. I haven't been on Instagram as much lately because I vehemently hate social media and the internet and the state of the world and AI,
Yep.
and I can't stomach it at the moment.
Yep. Yep.
But I do have fun making them sometimes, so I hope I could get back there someday. But yeah, and then the IBS Freedom podcast, which we were lucky enough to have Mitch on as a guest recently, and that episode should
Yeah.
post. I think it posts in the month of June, like late June, if I remember correctly. So keep an eye out for the Mitch guest episode on the IBS Freedom podcast, for that matter.
Right
But
on.
um, but I've got to bounce. I've got
Awesome. Well, thank you so
therapy
much for
appointment.
coming on. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with us on the Rooted Conversation podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Webb. Give us a like, give us a comment, leave us a question below, and all the resources we mentioned for Nikki will be in the comment section below. Thanks so much. You guys have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.